Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam, and I'm about to start the show, and I just want to make sure you know about my best-selling book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It'll teach you how attackers look at you so you can turn around and look at your own life, your business, your school, your church, synagogue, whatever. It'll help you look at that from the attacker's point of view so that you can then turn around and come up with better plans of action, better defenses, and overall better awareness. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. Go get it. If you're really a go-getter, there's 2 workbooks that you can utilize, or maybe you're in charge of security at your church or your school or whatever, and you need to do a threat assessment. You can read Sheep No More and then apply the tactics into the workbooks, the threat assessment and defense assessment workbook. Go get them all. And for your children, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Why is it called a parent's book for children? Because there are lesson plans at teamlittlebigs.com that go with the pictures in the children's book. Now, look, it's perfect for children between the ages of 2 and 8 and also learning disabled children. Children learn visually at that age. So the best way to teach them is by giving them this book. It's got pictures all through it, and the pictures with these incredible characters drawn by Danielle Kreiner, the pictures have lessons built into them, lessons of awareness, lessons of safety and communication. So they get to go through the pictures, and you get to teach them utilizing the pictures, and then they have a reference, what you've taught them and what these pictures represents, and it sticks in their mind. And it also reminds the parents of what's dangerous and, where the threats lie for children. Go get them all everywhere that books are available, and let's start the show.
The truth has arrived.
My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And welcome back to the show. This is going to be, I know I haven't done a show in like a week or two, and it seems like I've been slacking a little bit, but I've had, I was traveling, I've had some work to do, got to make some money, so I've had some work to do, and but there's certain things that are going on right now that I have to tackle. This is going to be a down and dirty show. It's not going to be too long. I know I always say that, but for real, it's not going to be too long because I have stuff I got to do tomorrow, but listen, this isn't your normal news show, okay? You should know that already if you listen to this show on a regular basis. This is, this is a little bit more of the stories behind the news and philosophical type things. But it's also, I like to think of this show as Paul Revere. It's the modern day Paul Revere. Instead of a horse, I have an RV and a Harley that I'm building, and I have this podcast that I can scream to you that the weirdos are coming. The weirdos are coming, because that's what Paul Revere would be screaming right now. There's these leftist weirdos are everywhere, and this show is going to be simply this. It's going to be a warning for you. Now, I've given this warning 1,000 times over the past 7 years. I got out of the FBI right at the beginning of January 2013. Went into media pretty quick after that. That was just I've told this story before. Catherine Harris did a story on my squad when I was in the FBI, and I was in charge of the special events unit in New York. And so I did all the threat assessments and operations orders and liaisoning for all the major events that were in New York City. And then I was the on-scene liaison for anything that would happen. So I got to see the reality of all these things that were going on. Anyway, Catherine Harris did a story on us, and then when the Boston bombing happened, I reached out to her because I was out of the FBI at that point for about 4 months, and I told her, I said, listen, I'm, I don't know if you remember me or not, but if you need anything, let me know. If you need any advice on any of this stuff for your reporting, let me know, and maybe I'll be able to give you some insight. That was through email, and then she calls me like 5 minutes later, and within probably an hour and a half, I was on television for the first time. And, well, not the first time, but in a long time. And I don't think I breathed but 2 times the entire hour. But that's how I got started. So ever since then, it's very interesting because I took, when I left the Bureau, I had left official service, and I had been in official service since 1997. So it had been a long time that I had been doing the government's work in one way, shape, or form. And when you're on the job, you don't question what you're doing. I mean, you didn't at that point because things weren't as crazy as they are now. They weren't as in your face as they are now. And so here we are this many years later, and we find ourselves in the middle of all the things that I've been warning about. And the reason it was easy for me to see what was happening was because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, because I'm a trained investigator, because I know how counterintelligence works, and because when I started seeing things that were odd, because I got the opportunity to be behind the scenes in media, that's where I was going with this story, is very quickly I went from government service for that many years into media. And so I got to see the things that happened behind the scenes. And I knew something was happening in this nation. You could just feel it. Everybody could feel it. When Barack Obama got elected, you could feel it. When Trump was running for office, you could feel it. After 9/11, you could feel it, but you didn't know what it exactly was. Everybody thought it was terrorism or this foreign enemy or that foreign enemy. But once I was behind the scenes in media, what I started to see is that it was domestic. And it's not white supremacy. I said on a tweet last week, the entire time I was in the FBI or in law enforcement in general, I never dealt with white supremacy. Now, there's no doubt that it's out there, but so are squirrels. And we're not reporting on, every couple of years somebody gets killed by a squirrel. But you don't hear people reporting on it because it doesn't happen that often. Or people slipping on a watermelon seed. How many old people have you heard about slipping on a watermelon seed and breaking their hip and then they die subsequent to that fall? Right? That doesn't make headline news because it doesn't happen very often. The same thing with white supremacists. These weirdos just aren't out there doing stuff all the time. They really can't, because they're going to be identified very quickly for what they do. And there's just, quite frankly, there's not that many of them. And so all these things that have been going on, I was able to kind of put a finger on this and say, this just isn't right. There's something odd here. And the further I got away from 2013, the more of it that I saw. One of the big things I saw about the government that really clued me in on the reality of what the government does is when my first client, after leaving the FBI, I was doing crisis management, very, very rich guy at one point, and he spent all his money. He made money, he spent it. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. The guy could not spend money, and people used him as an ATM machine. Now, the problem with people bringing you in as crisis managers is that they don't do it when they're not in a crisis. That's when they should be doing it. Once you're in the crisis, sometimes these crises can't be managed. It's really, how hard are you going to hit? That's what you manage. In this case, he went bankrupt. And about 2 years later, the trustee, right, the government trustee that goes in, and the federal court system works through a trustee to split up all the stuff that's left and auction it off and everything. This trustee, and what the federal court does is they try to string these things out for as long as they can. Sometimes these cases last as long as 10 years or more. So a trustee and the federal court and all the people working on that case, they're not in any hurry. They'll try to sue people that have nothing to do with anything, people that got paid legitimately. And they'll make claims that they were paid fraudulently, and then they'll go after them. And this will go on. In some of these cases, these trustees will work, they're probably working several cases at the same time, but ultimately it's not like they're they're just jamming cases through. So these are people who are going to work a certain amount of cases and in 20 years and they'll be done. 30 years and they'll be done. I don't know where the word trustee came from. Now you're probably asking, where is this going? Well, that's an example. They name somebody that does something corrupt like that. And yes, it is corrupt. They name them a trustee of the court, and they're not trustworthy at all. They're corrupt people. They utilize bad situations to make themselves a lot of money and build careers over a period of time of just doing that, just really raping people while they're in a bad situation. I'm not talking about physically raping, sexually raping them. I'm talking about raping them mentally and economically. And that's what they do. Now, I didn't go bankrupt, but my client did. And subsequently, that trustee went after everybody as though everybody that had been employed before had something to do with the way that this guy worked. I knew something was wrong when I started seeing this. You know, having spent that long, almost 20 years in service, doing what was right on all levels of law enforcement, for instance, as a regular street cop in Camp Robinson, Arkansas, in North Little Rock, Camp Robinson National Guard Base. We weren't corrupt cops there. We didn't go out trying to pick on people or harass people because of the color of their skin. We just did our job. We didn't have to go harass people. People just screw up all the time. Not like it is now. This is back in 1997. Being an air marshal, you know, it's the same thing. We didn't pick on people because they were Muslim. We were looking for people who, and we should have actually been, to be honest with you, we should have been specifically targeting people like the ones who did the bombing on 9/11. But because of political correctness, you know, we didn't really know what we were looking for. I mean, I did, but most people didn't. So what we didn't see, I didn't see it at all, were people that were air marshals going onto planes specifically targeting Muslims so they could harass them and beat them up and murder them. Nor did they do that to black people or Jewish people or anybody else. They went on there and did a job with very little information, and they did it to the best of their ability. And some crazy, weird situations that we had to deal with, basically on our own. I went from there working for DHS, and I skipped over the SEAL team because the SEAL teams, you know, that's about as perfect of a career as you can get, as far as I'm concerned. Not now. I mean, the leftists have infiltrated that area of operations as well. But then when I went in the FBI, I never saw anybody targeting individuals for the color of their skin or their gender or sexuality or any reason other than the fact that people were doing bad things. You just don't see it. Just like you don't see white supremacy. And so here's what I want. This is why I was saying that this is going to be quick and down and dirty. And it's going to be a warning. Because all the things that you're seeing in the news right now, and people are saying, I'm so sick of this and I'm tired of it. And I see people on like LinkedIn or on Twitter or talking out loud, and you're afraid to say something out loud. You're afraid. You're literally afraid. You're afraid you're going to lose your job if you associate with the wrong person. And I'm not talking about white supremacists. I'm not talking about somebody who has look, I have a shaved head, but that's because I'm going bald. But I'm not talking about skinheads who have SS tattooed on them. I'm talking about conservatives. People are worried about their careers because they're talking to a conservative or because they're talking about reality. You're not going to hear people out in the open saying that, you know, George Floyd's death was a combination of several things. First of all, he was high on dope. He fought the police. He resisted. And he just happened to do that with an incompetent police officer who's a bad dude, who sat on his neck And as this guy was having probably cardiac arrest and no telling what else, he couldn't get any air because of the way he was being held. Listen, in my book, from law enforcement perspective, that's murder. Okay, there's no doubt about that. But you're not going to hear people talk about the fact that George Floyd was responsible for his own death. If he hadn't have been in that situation, if he hadn't been doing drugs, if he hadn't had a run-in with the police, he wouldn't have had that issue. Or if he did run in and have a run-in with him, if he behaved because he wasn't on drugs, he would still be alive. Even with Chauvin, whatever his idiot's name is, the biggest idiot ever in law enforcement right there. You're not going to see people discuss that because they're afraid. Now, some people do, and they don't really care, and they have jobs that they're secure in. They're not really worried about it. But I know a lot of people, the whispers are heavy. They will not talk out loud. It's like, oh, did you hear about Aunt Martha? She has cancer. It's like that. Did you hear about George Floyd? He's 50% responsible for what happened. People won't say it. Daunte Wright's the same way. Daunte Wright got shot because an incompetent police officer, as he was fighting and resisting, she thought she had her taser in her hand and she shot him and killed him. It wasn't premeditated. She didn't intend to kill him. She thought she had her taser. She's stupid. In my book, it's manslaughter. In my book, I would look at that as involuntary manslaughter. Because I can guarantee you, if you were playing a joke on somebody and you tripped them and they fell and busted their head open and died, you're going to get charged with manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. However, Daunte Wright fought the cops and he resisted arrest. And he also beat a woman up and choked her while he was armed. And he had a warrant out for his arrest. Shh. And so people are afraid. They're afraid to say that. But here's the thing, okay? For one, it's all in your delivery. You want to be bold, just like the mask thing, okay? You got to choose your mountain that you're going to die on. Everybody's was for the longest time freaked out about these masks. Listen, masks, I hate the masks. But obviously they do something, because I basically don't know anybody who's been sick except for COVID over the past year. I don't know anybody who's had the flu. I don't even know anybody who's had a common cold. I think allergies are starting to kick up right now, but overall, that's probably going to help with that too. Now, I'm not defending masks. Heaven knows I don't want to wear one, and I don't if I don't have to. Go to the gym, I got to wear one there. But people have made the mask mandate their hill to die on, and I think it's a stupid hill to die on. A lot of people have gotten into serious trouble and had run-ins with the police and made asses out of themselves in public because they wanted to stand up for what was right, and they end up looking like idiots. It's not a hill that I'm going to die on. Why? I know people are saying, well, you should. Well, no. Here's why. Because I don't stand on the hill by myself. Okay, I'm more tactical than that. And I know all you out there that are saying, yeah, I'm standing on that's my hill, I'm a dying. Great, you go do that. You go end up looking like an idiot. You get videotaped. You do whatever, get arrested by the police. I'm going to go on and live my life, work on my Harley, sell my books, and preach the truth to people. But the fact is, not enough people will stand together to stop the mask mandate. You do have governors who are standing up for it, and people that are doing the right thing in those states. But in the other states, like in New York, or California or these other places, you just don't have enough people standing up against the government. If 10,000 people said, we're not wearing our masks anymore, you probably wouldn't have to wear your mask. So when I say it's not a hill to die on, it's not a hill to die on because You got to have other warriors with you when you're going to die on a hill, when you're going to take a hill. That way you don't have to die on it. You only die on a hill when you don't have superior firepower or tactics. So, and I don't know if you've realized this, but people on the right don't really stand with each other. So, getting back to what I was saying, people are afraid and they're buying into the I'm going to be canceled thing because, one, they don't stand together. And two, because their delivery is wrong. You go on Twitter or you go outside and you say, I'm not going to hide the way I feel. George Floyd is responsible for his own death. F this or F that. Listen, I mean, you're partially right. But you got to learn how to deliver that message. Because you have to be tactical in this day and age. You want to debate people on LinkedIn, which I do constantly. I don't have anything to lose. If you have a serious job and you know if they see you in this that you could get fired, don't go down that road. Don't go down that road. Not right now. But for the rest of you out there, this is what you have to understand, okay? The cancel culture is real. It is a real thing. They will try to ruin your life. However, the narrative that they use is a lie. And therein lies the key to the left, okay? Everything they discuss is a lie, right? This is probably the freest country in the world for gay people. But yet, if you listen to them, they talk about how oppressed gay people are as though transgender people are getting murdered on a daily basis. They're not. It's not happening. You listen to them and you go on Twitter and you watch them talk about Dante Wright as though he was some kind of a young, innocent child who was destined to be a hero. He was not. He's a bad dude. And he fought the cops at 20 years old, and it did not end well. They want to talk about George Floyd. Nancy Pelosi thanked him today, or yesterday, thanked him for being a martyr for freedom. George Floyd was a criminal, a lifelong criminal, high on dope, who fought the police and was driving under the influence. However, the narrative is a lie that they use. Another woman came on LinkedIn today, and she was going against something that I said. She started laying out all these things because they throw out the racist thing. They'll throw out the racist. Then she said, "Oh, you probably support rape," or I'm gonna some kind of misogynist accusation. All a lie. But it doesn't bother me. Again, I don't have anything to lose. This is what I do. But she came on there saying that she doesn't have the same rights. That's a lie. Freest country in the world for black people. For white people, black people have the same rights as everyone else. She says that young, innocent black men are constantly harassed while walking down the street, just walking down the street. Cops are just going up and just harassing them, and in certain cases, killing them or locking them up for no reason. It's not true. That woman is an echo chamber. She's an echo chamber for the left. She may or may not even know it. She's spouting things off that are a lie. I can guarantee you every single one of those situations might have been somebody who done nothing, was a black guy walking down the street, but perhaps he fit the profile of somebody who had just committed a crime. Maybe he's wearing the same thing. Police walk up to him and try to identify who he is. And then what happens is that they start smarting off at the cop. Now the cop's thinking, okay, something's up. This might actually be the guy. It turns out maybe it's not. But instead of working with the law enforcement officer, giving them correct answers, showing them your ID, they end up getting in an argument and fighting the police when there was no reason, or they just run. Maybe they're scared because they're told that these murders and this harassment go on all the time. And who are they told that by? Their parents. Their parents aren't teaching them the proper way to act when you are in a interaction with law enforcement. They don't teach them that. They teach them to be afraid. They teach them, things like what that idiot lieutenant, Navarro, I don't remember what his last name was, a lieutenant from the Army, United States Army, the most insulting thing I've ever seen for a guy in uniform, would not cooperate with law enforcement. He ends up getting pepper sprayed. That changed his attitude real quick. But then he sued the police department. And the cop who the tactics that the cop used, he's an idiot. He got fired. However, they were basically doing a felony car stop because they didn't know what was going on with a car with tinted windows and a license plate that was in the back window, the temporary license plate they couldn't identify. By the way, he also had a gun in the car. Probably one of the reasons why he was acting like he was. He wouldn't get out. He wouldn't cooperate. He just kept saying, what's going on? Why do you have your guns pulled? Yada, yada, yada. Instead of doing what they told him to do. But that's not what parents teach. That's not what all these activists teach or the leftist politicians teach. Resist. Resist those cops. It's your right to ask those questions. Okay. All right. Keep putting yourself into those situations and watch what happens. People are going to keep getting themselves injured, and whether they're guilty of something or not, because they resist and fight the police. Even Chris Rock used to say that in those little videos that he used to do. You resist a cop, you're going to get beat down. It's not because the cops show up just wanting to beat people down. It's because the police are usually, when they're interacting with a person, it's because there's an emergency situation, or because they're looking for somebody who's done something wrong, or because you did do something wrong. They don't go around harassing people for no reason. Now, could those things happen? Sure, they could happen. There's bad people in everything. I remember one of the last people I locked up when I was in the FBI was a doctor and a pharmacist who were all part of a drug ring out at on Long Island. Bad people are into everything. So, yeah, there could be bad cops. There are bad cops. I think the cops in Minneapolis, Chauvin or whatever his name is, he was an idiot cop. And those other cops were idiots, too, for sitting on that guy. I would never have sat on that guy. Even if I wasn't in charge, I would have said, hey, listen, guys, he's going to die right here. Get off of him. I'm not going to be a part of this. I would have said that. Let's roll him on his side like we're supposed to. We'll all hold him down. Incompetence. So it does exist. Bad things do exist. But the thing is, folks, where I'm going with all this warning that I'm telling you, is even if you have a solution, they don't want to hear it. The left doesn't want to hear it because they're lying. Everything is a lie. Everything about racism is a lie. Everything about oppression is a lie. The only people right now being oppressed are conservatives, Christians, and white people. That's really it. And who's oppressing them? The left. That's the truth. The inner city and the violence within the inner city is why police officers in that area are at a heightened alert all the time. It's dangerous. You go to any major city, you go to the one part where it's the poorest, typically where the most black people live, and that's not a racial statement. That is a fact. And that I've had several conversations with good friends of mine that are black and have been all over the country. It's the same thing. They know the same thing. They say the same thing. It's not a racial statement. You know what that is? It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. It shouldn't be that way. There's nothing in a black person's skin or mind or body that that makes them predetermined to live in the hood or in a violent area. You know who keeps them there? The Democrats keep them there. You know who keeps them there? They keep themselves there. I know plenty of people. I was in the SEAL teams with several black guys. Nothing was going to stop those people. Those dudes were amazing. There was my buddy Winningham was in my school, in my platoon. Nothing was going to stop him from doing what he wanted to do in his life. That guy's amazing. But the fact is, it's a lie. Now, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but you got to start realizing this. You got to start being smarter about talking about the things that you want to talk about. Don't shy away from it if you don't have to, but don't go out there and make a jackass of yourself and end up giving them some fodder to show that or try to prove that you're a racist. You say the wrong thing, they're going to go after you. And the reason why I wanted to do this show today was to tell you, you need to look at the facts. Facts are what you can point out. The fact is, cops don't go and just harass a young black man walking down the street. The fact is, cops aren't just going out and shooting unarmed black men at an incredibly alarming rate as compared to any other race. It's a fact that when those people get shot, white or black or whatever, it's you or a female, which just got shot because she was trying to stab another girl with a knife and she got shot. It's because they are engaged in a felonious, violent activity or they fight the police and they resist. They create the situation. It's a lie that January 6th was an insurrection. It's not a lie that Maxine Waters tried to cause riots today. It's not a lie that the left will basically exonerate her while at the same time they will crucify anybody who tries to stand up for the Constitution. It's a fact that they are using, that the left is using these situations, and I'm not even going to use the word tragic. A tragedy is a child falling into a swimming pool and drowning. A tragedy is an elderly person that gets COVID and then passes away younger than they should have. That's a tragedy. A tragedy is not when somebody fights or resists the police and it ends up in their death. That right there is a choice that ended badly, is what that is. So these are all lies and truths that you need to understand so that when somebody comes at you or they try to say something or they try to cancel you, that you have cannon fodder. But here's the thing. Okay, I know I said this is going to be a shorter show. Here is the thing that you have to take away from this. This is the thing that you have to remember. You have to realize, folks, that this narrative is being pumped out, which you know this already, okay? You know this already because you saw it with President Trump, with the whole Russian investigation thing, okay? They made it sound like the Russians were an integral part of everything that President Trump did, that the Russians were right there, that Putin and Trump are thick as thieves. It was a lie. They made it sound like this dossier was true. It was a lie. That it was all these different things about the FISA and the spying and this and that. It was all lies. I mean, the spying was real. They did spy on Trump and several others. But the entire 4 years that the president was in, they lied, tried to impeach him, lied, and continued to do that. And here's what happened, okay? The president, God bless him, thickest skin I think any human being has ever had, was under attack daily, and he did not fight back tactically. Sometimes he needed to be bold and say things back to them, but there were other times when he could have done what Joe Biden does. I'm giving Joe Biden's props for this. Or he could have done what Kamala Harris has been doing. Nothing, right? He could have done nothing. He could have been more tactical in the way he chose to respond and where he needed to respond. That's the lesson to be learned. I don't want to call it a failure. It's just that he was inundated by this stuff on a daily basis. And he did it the way it felt for him to do it at the time. But I want you to learn from that. Because the same thing is being played now, but it's not Trump anymore. It's us. It's the people. And I'm not talking about myself and other white people. I'm not talking about just conservatives and Christians. I'm talking about also my friends out there who consider themselves liberal. I'm talking about black people. I'm talking about gay people. I'm even talking about transgender people, all these different individuals. You're being lied to. You're being told that you're oppressed. You're being told that there's this division. The division is being caused by the lie. It's not being caused by oppression. It's not being caused by racism or white supremacy. Just like black people, young black men aren't being killed because they're being targeted by police. They're being killed because in their interactions with law enforcement, they have either committed a crime or committing a crime, and they fight or they just resist law enforcement, and it ends in a bad way. But they're being told a lie. Police are targeting black people. White supremacy is out there. Gays are oppressed. Christians are bad. This is the truth. That's all a lie. And I know you know that, but you cannot continue to make the same mistakes that President Trump made when he dealt with it. You have to think through it and deal with it on a tactical basis. You have to be willing to stand up against it together. You have to be, that's what the left does. Everything that they do is tactical. There could have been, listen, I want you to think about this. This verdict went down today. He's guilty on all 3 counts. I'm talking about in the George Floyd killing. Had that gone another way, had Maxine Waters' big fat mouth got in the way and caused a mistrial, they would have had riots. Instead, they had marches and in some cases celebrations. We learned, which many of us already knew, but we definitely learned from Time Magazine and that article that I went over in several different podcasts after the election. We learned that they have such an incredible system of activists, money, politicians, and communications that they are able within phone calls. They have people standing by in those locations ready to riot and to organize riots or a party. They did it. After the election night, there were several people, groups that were wanting to go out and riot, and they said, hold off. Just hold off for a second. And then when the time came, they said, we're not going to riot. They protested. They did not like that, but they said, okay, what are we going to do? And they said, we're going to party. And they did that, and it worked. Tonight, it could have gone the other way, but it wouldn't have done it naturally. It would have done it because it was organized, and if they flipped the switch, they could have caused riots everywhere. Don't think that's what they do. Don't think it's not going to happen again. It's going to happen again. But I want you to realize that's how organized the left is. Meanwhile, the right and people that think they should be on the left, because, listen, there are people on the left because they're communists. There's a lot of people that are on the left because they feel like because they believe the lie. I don't know what the percentage is, but the people who argue with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, there's a great vast majority of those people are just leftists. There's nothing you'll be able to tell them. But there's a lot of people who buy into the lie. I used to have neighbors when I lived on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I love these people. But, man, they're so ridiculously stupid to these lies. And they believe this stuff. Huge Black Lives Matter supporters because they believe the lie. And if they realize that the lie is there, hopefully they'll see that they're standing on the wrong side, because those are the people that they say we need protesters out there. They'll go there. The right needs to have that. And listen, you're not going to be able to count on the Republican Party. It is not a party of the people. The Republican Party is a business. It is a business of getting people elected. I know, I see it up close firsthand. They are not in the business of teaching courses, organizing rallies. The only rallies that they ever organize are ones for a campaign. That's it. They don't bus people places. They don't shut stuff down. They don't keep it real. They don't do any of that stuff. The Republican Party works for the Republican Party, not you. So they are a vessel to get conservatives elected. That's it. And you have to realize that. I cannot say this enough. If the right does not start standing together, we are going to fall. And it's going to happen very quickly. I said this before November when President Trump lost or had his election stolen, whatever you want to call it. He's not the president now. He's not going to be the president, at least until the next election. I don't care what Mike Lindell says. The reality is we have to learn from what he did, which is get too ingrained in the narrative himself to the point where every single day he was reacting instead of acting. We cannot allow ourselves to continue to react. We have to act. And the way that starts is by first accepting that these things are lies. They're all lies. It's all, you could sit back. It's a picture that you could literally paint on a wall. And if you're on the left and you're listening to this, you have to realize, I'm not a racist. I'm the furthest thing from a racist. I'm not a misogynist. I'm the furthest thing from that. The fact is, I want people to learn how to deal with the cops so that they don't get killed. I want people to start raising their children with a dad and a mom in the black culture so that these kids can grow up and be good, respectable citizens. I want people to come to this country from other nations that want to be an American, come here the right way, legally, and then serve this country and make great things of themselves. I love that thought. I know several people who've done that. There's nothing in me that ever judges other people in a way that degrades them, demoralizes them, or thinks that I'm more than they are. That doesn't exist inside of me. But I'm a realist. And I know that the inner city is largely black, and it's the most violent areas in this United States. And quite frankly, it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me because there's nothing different about a black man than there is a white man, a black woman versus a white woman, a gay black woman versus a gay white woman. There's no difference. You have the same free will. But as I pointed out over the past couple of weeks, when a group of people who have free will start acting the same exact way and repeating the same exact thing or taking the same action, they are a product of influence. And that influence is what causes people to go do mass shootings. Mass shootings are they're through the roof right now. That is not a behavior that is normal. It's not normal for a human being to kill another human being, especially outside of social norms where you go in and you're not in self-defense, but you're actually going in and murdering a bunch of people. That's not human nature. So why is it out of the roof right now? Because of influence. Something has occurred. People have been influenced. And people who have mental issues or substance issues are acting upon that. I know that's the case. So what you have to realize is that we cannot get stuck not doing anything because we're afraid to get canceled. We cannot risk not coming together and standing together. And we can't depend on the Republican Party. We just can't. Let me say that again. And that's why I'm going to close this show, because I'll continue to harp on this. There's going to be plenty more to come. Now, I want you to listen to this show, and then I want you to share it. I don't care if you're liberal or conservative. You have to start realizing this, that the left is nothing but a great lie. Everything that they tell you is either entrapping liberals into believing the lie, or it's isolating and oppressing people on the right who don't believe the lie. Liberals and conservatives, we're in the same game now. That game is trickery and oppression. Black people are not being hunted down and killed by white cops. Black people don't have less rights. Gays aren't oppressed in this nation. And racism is not a part of the foundation of this nation. It's a lie. You have to start standing together. You have to start standing up to the lie, or else we're done. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and I'm out of here.